Dr. Now spent 13 seasons on TLC, building one of the most recognizable shows in reality TV history.
Tell me, what do you see?
A big failure.
If you don't follow what your doctors say, and if you don't trust them, you should go see somebody else.
I don't want to get malnourished either.
Do you look like you're malnourished? Put on almost 50 pounds since you're right instead of losing. And you claim that you're not eating very much? Really?
Then after episode 7 of season 13 of My 600 Pound Life aired on TLC in February 2025, the show simply stopped. TLC never announced a 14th season, but it never announced a cancellation either. The show just stopped producing with no explanation. And the real clue about what happened is this. While My 600 Pound Life was still airing its final episodes on TLC, Dr. Now had already moved on to a brand new show on a completely different network.
Dr. Now, I want my chance to live.
The scale doesn't lie. You have to do your part.
So what's actually different? We're breaking down exactly what changed, what stayed the same, and how the 6,000-pound Diaries with Dr. Now trades the shock value of the original for something a little more honest. But before we get into the new show, we need to talk about what made My 600 Pound Life so compelling in the first place. The concept was simple. Each episode followed one patient, usually over 600 pounds, through roughly a year of trying to turn their life around. They'd make the journey to Houston, walk into Dr. Now's office, and whatever happened next was anyone's guess. Some made it.
It's been 2 years since I had weight loss surgery, and I would have never imagined life could be so great. I've gained a whole new independence, and I finally moved out from my family's house.
Some didn't.
I keep telling myself this has to be a really bad dream. And it's just not. It's reality.
And you genuinely never knew which way it was going to go. But one of the primary reasons the audience tuned into My 600 Pound Life was Dr. Now himself. Blunt, direct, and completely unmoved by excuses.
Do you look like you're malnourished? You're overeating, and whatever you're overeating, you're throwing up. It means the surgery is working to hold you back when you make bad choices. And it's the only reason that you didn't gain 100 pounds these past 2 months.
While every other doctor on television was tiptoeing around their patients' feelings, Dr. Now was telling people to their face that the scale doesn't lie, and neither does he. He became a meme, a cultural icon, and somehow also the person millions of viewers genuinely trusted to save these people's lives. And the show had real stakes. These weren't people trying to lose 20 pounds before a wedding. These were morbidly obese individuals with severe food addiction, often rooted in childhood trauma. These were morbidly obese individuals with severe food addiction, often rooted in childhood trauma and a vicious cycle of enablement within their family structures. Was it always flattering to its subjects? Definitely not. But it was compelling television. 13 seasons of it. So what went wrong? For all its success, My 600 Pound Life was never without its problems. And by the later seasons, those problems were getting harder to ignore. One of the biggest issues was the perception of exploitation. Critics and former patients argued the show leaned too heavily on humiliation and shock value. And over the years, some of those patients became vocal about what went on behind the scenes.
Even in reality, the producers and the production write a story, and then you come in and you film whatever storyline they are portraying. They are always blaming their mama, or blaming their daddy, or blaming this, or blaming that. No, that was the script that's written.
Several patients alleged that producers actually pushed them to overeat on camera, just to manufacture drama and make them look non-compliant. Others claimed parts of their episodes were scripted, saying they were fed lines to read in voiceover. And then there was the show's long-running fixation on filming patients showering or undressing. One former patient said she wasn't even given a choice about being filmed in the shower. Then there were the lawsuits. Over 10 former patients or their families filed lawsuits against the company that produces My 600 Pound Life, Megalomedia. This wasn't a single class action lawsuit. It was a wave of 10 separate suits, almost all filed within a few months of each other in 2020. It started when the family of fan favorite L.B. Bonner sued over his death. 9 more former patients and their families followed close behind, alleging negligence, emotional distress, and failure to provide the medical coverage they were promised. These weren't minor complaints. Some of these cases involved people who felt the show had actively worsened their situation. We covered that whole dirty drama in another video if you want to check that one out next. I'll drop a link in the description below. Hype this video and subscribe to the channel while you're at it, would you? It's worth being clear about one thing. Almost none of this was ever aimed at Dr. Now personally. The complaints were about the production company and the people steering the ship from behind the scenes. But adding fuel to the controversy were the deaths. Look, it's fair to say that many people who came to Dr. Now were already living on borrowed time. At 600, 700, even 800 pounds, their hearts and organs were already failing long before they met Dr. Now. The show didn't cause that, but critics have long asked a harder question. Did the production make things worse? Because a handful of these deaths hit uncomfortably close to the process of filming itself. Kelly Mason died of cardiac arrest in her sleep while her episode was still being filmed. Colisa McMillan died at 41 from complications following the weight loss surgery. And L.B. Bonner, one of the show's biggest success stories, ended his life while reportedly still following the program. Being uprooted to Houston, stripped of food as your main coping mechanism, and filmed at your absolute lowest is its own kind of pressure. More than 24 former participants have died since the show premiered in 2012. Most of those deaths trace back to the weight itself, but every time a new name appeared in the headlines, the same haunting question hung over it. Was the show actually helping these people, or was it just documenting their decline for entertainment? Even though these reasons weren't enough to kill the show outright, they left a stain that 13 seasons of success could never quite wash off. And it raised the stakes for whatever Dr. Now did next. So, when he resurfaced on Lifetime in 2025 with a brand new show, the question wasn't whether it was good. It was, what would be different this time around? The 6,000 Pound Diaries premiered on Lifetime on January 6th, 2025. And the first thing worth understanding is what that title actually means. Obviously, it's not one person weighing 6,000 pounds. Instead, the show follows 10 individuals in one season whose combined starting weight exceeds 6,000 pounds. And the diaries part is just as literal. A big chunk of the show is built from the patient's own video diaries. These are self-recorded confessionals where they document their journeys in their own words between visits with Dr. Now. Dr. Now remains the medical authority with the same medical facility in Houston. He still sits across from each patient and sets a target weight they have to hit before he'll even consider approving them for surgery. The therapy component is still mandatory too. And just like on My 600 Pound Life, each episode includes a retrospective backstory from the patient, who they are, what their life looks like, and what series of events or traumas led them to weighing over 600 pounds in the first place. So the foundation is very much still intact, but a lot has changed around it. For starters, the production style. On My 600 Pound Life, the cameras documented everything without ever really announcing themselves. They were everywhere, at the dinner table, in the doctor's office, even in the showers. You stopped noticing them, but nothing was off limits.
The most difficult part about taking a shower is getting under the folds of skin. I have folds of skin everywhere, places that you wouldn't even think you're supposed to have a fold of skin.
The 6,000 Pound Diaries takes a completely different approach. Much of the footage comes from self-recorded diary cams and personal confessionals. There's still a camera crew following the patients, but their role is significantly scaled back in favor of more intimate diary cam confessionals.
I missed the therapy session that I was supposed to go to, and that's because I overslept. I just didn't make it a priority. I mean, I think it's weird to just sit there and talk to a complete stranger about my problems.
Patients are documenting their own journey in their own words, on their own terms. Then there's patient control and authenticity. On My 600 Pound Life, patients had no control over their own narrative. The producers decided what made it to air, whether it was secret food stashes or explosive family arguments. As long as it made for good TV, that's the version you saw, whether the patients liked it or not. With the 6,000 Pound Diaries, that power dynamic shifts. There's still a film crew capturing the major moments, but that's now paired with the patient's own diary cams. Patients choose what to share and speak for themselves, instead of following a producer-driven narrative or reading scripted VO. They have a hand in shaping their own story in a way My 600 Pound Life never allowed. Patient journeys are on a new timeline as well. My 600 Pound Life followed patients over an extended stretch of time, though how long has changed dramatically over the years. The first season tracked its subjects across 7 years. By season 2, that shrank to a single year. And in later seasons, some patients were followed for as little as 6 months. However long it took, you saw everything. The good months, the bad months, the setbacks, and the breakthroughs. The 6,000-Pound Diaries appears to be more flexible. It's only 1 season in, but so far there's no fixed timeline. A patient's journey can range anywhere from 6 to 10 months, depending on how fast they're progressing. Then there's the trip to Houston. On My 600-Pound Life, that first trip to see Dr. Now was practically its own storyline. Watching someone who weighs over 600 pounds navigate a car ride or a flight to Houston made for some of the most memorable moments in the show's entire run.
Just hoping that I can get down the aisle of the plane and get to my seat. So that's my biggest concern right now. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this.
You got this. You got this. You got this. You're in. You're in. Okay? You're in. Take a breath.
The logistics alone gave the audience a visceral sense of just how much the weights and sizes of these patients had taken over every aspect of their lives. The 6,000-Pound Diaries handles this differently. We do see patients making their way to Dr. Now's office, but the show doesn't linger on it the way the original did. The focus shifts quickly to what happens once they get there, and how they apply the doctor's orders once they return home. The level of drama has been scaled back on the 6,000-Pound Diaries. The chaos typically associated with reality TV has been dialed down and replaced with emotional breakthroughs and mental health conversations. Whereas My 600-Pound Life built its reputation on intensity. Explosive confrontations with Dr. Now, families enabling patients behind his back, and personal crises playing out on camera. Some might argue the show now feels sanitized. But I personally prefer a more honest, documentary-style series than manufactured reality TV with a capital D for drama. Which brings me to the change in tone. The 6,000-Pound Diaries feels noticeably more optimistic.
So you think you can do that?
I really wish the goal was less, but that's what you got set for me, so I know I can do it.
The framing is more supportive. The storytelling leans toward progress, and the overall atmosphere is one of, you can do this, rather than, you're running out of time. On the other hand, My 600-Pound Life never shied away from failure. Patients were removed from the program, surgeries got denied. People went home in worse shape than they arrived. The show was honest about the fact that not everyone makes it. Lastly, there's the network switch. My 600-Pound Life was born and raised on TLC, which built its entire brand on raw, unfiltered reality television. This is the same network that gave us shows like 90 Day Fiancé, Toddlers and Tiaras, and MILF Manor. If it was messy, uncomfortable, and impossible to look away from, TLC was airing it. Lifetime is a completely different animal. It's the network behind emotional, character-driven programming. From its signature original movies to scripted hits like Army Wives, Lifetime built its programming around drama and feeling, rather than shock value. Lifetime is also a network under the A&E banner, where shows like the long-running Intervention have made a home. Some might argue that My 600-Pound Life never belonged on TLC in the first place. So with all those changes on the table, what does the audience actually think about it? Longtime fans of My 600-Pound Life were sold the moment they heard Dr. Now had a new show. So the initial response to the 6,000-Pound Diaries was overwhelmingly positive, just because he was back. Some hardcore fans think the new show is too slow, too soft, and missing the raw energy that made the original so compelling. They miss the chaos, the confrontations, and the unfiltered access. On the other side, a growing number of viewers, including people who never warmed up to the original, actually prefer the new format. They find it more respectful, more emotionally honest, and easier to root for the patients seeking help at their lowest. Which camp do you fall into? There's no wrong answer. Both shows are doing something real. They're just built for different eras. The era of shock TV that made My 600-Pound Life a phenomenon is fading. The 6,000-Pound Diaries is indicative of a new era, where viewers care less about spectacle and more about the real human story underneath it. So forget which one is better or comes out on top. The real question is whether the 6,000-Pound Diaries with Dr. Now can carry that kind of storytelling for the long haul. Whichever side of the fence you're on, let's be honest, it's too early to make a definitive call. The 6,000-Pound Diaries only has 1 season under its belt. But what I can say is this: the foundation is solid, and the show is clearly heading in a different direction. Whether that direction pays off in the long run is something only time will tell. Either way, Dr. Now is sharp as ever. Click the video on your screen to see how he handles new patient Trista, who is still processing the loss of her baby, her husband, and hopefully a few hundred pounds.